All right, before I invite Ben up, I want to introduce him. Thank you, Marcus, but that chair's facing the wrong way, so I'm going to move that real quick. It's going to be an anonymous speaker. I've been excited for this conversation. When stuff started going all crazy in our nation and and a lot of the unrest that's been taking place, I believe that God wanted to speak through the members of our church. And I was praying, and we've had a great time. The Paytons came, and we also had the Renricks that were here, and they spoke. And also Nestor was able to preach. It's been really exciting, don't you guys think? I've enjoyed it personally, and so that's something that I believe God was working. But one of the first names that came up, probably the first name that God brought to mind was Ben Jenkins, because Ben is in a very unique situation. And so I've been looking forward to this. And so before Ben gets up here, before he can say anything, I want to say, Ben, we're really grateful for you. If you don't know, Ben was in the military for a number of years on our behalf. We are able to meet freely, and we have a free country because there are people that put their lives on the line. Ben taught at our school for a number of years. Also, Ben has been a police officer. And so, as a community, as people, this is one of our heroes. This is a guy who's not afraid to put his life on the line, and he has a family, and he has wife and kids that love him very much, but he defends us in Santa Monica. But also, one thing that's been very special to me and that Kathy pointed out to me is that when you listen to the callings and when people have been giving their testimony, there have been a few people, and some of their names keep coming up, and one of the names that has come up quite a few times as a major influence in the young men of our church has been Ben Jenkins. And so, and I'm talking about some of our leaders today. And so this is a man who has influenced even the leadership in our church. And so Ben has something to say. And so Ben's a leader. So I would like to welcome Ben to come up. Just give him a big hand as he comes. Amen. No, bring us there. I'm going to grab the There you go.
Evening.
All right, Ben, let's just pretend like there's nobody here, and we're not on camera, and we're going to have a conversation. Let me grab my... Oh, thanks, Josh. All right, so I didn't mean to embarrass you by all that, Ben, but I really mean everything I say, and I'm really grateful for you. And, I had the privilege of knowing Ben when he was little. I don't know if Ben would call that a privilege, knowing me, because I wasn't always the nicest guy to the guys that were younger than me in the church. But, when I got saved, I was the youth leader, right? I wasn't that bad, was I?
It was pretty bad.
All right. Okay, so let's just change the topic. All right. I have a bad memory, so I don't remember anything. So maybe, Ben, for those of our church family, because it's been a little while, I think, since you've been up here, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background, your story,
absolutely.
Why you're a part of the Lighthouse, or how you came to the Lighthouse. And
I am the second child of Carrie and Gary Jenkins. They had 4 boys. Second boy was born here at UCLA. Raised in Mar Vista, California. Growing up in my early years, my mom and dad, they weren't married until my brother Anthony was born. And it was a struggle. My mom is a white woman. My dad's black and from Louisiana, the South. And coming out here, their relationship was, it was something new in the late 70s, early 80s. That was a struggle. I know it was a struggle for my dad. And then having kids at an early age. My mom was only 21 when she had me, 19 when she had Chris.
Wow.
That was tough. They weren't really in a position to, start a family. Just things happen. And thank God my mom got saved at an early age.
Yeah.
And that really rescued her, and she, did the best she could. We were on welfare, when I was growing up. And, it's like, mom's, she's got 4 boys, taking care of them by herself. It was something that she had to do, something that she was never proud of, something that she was always like, hey, I'm only doing this because, like, we're in this position. She's like, but this is not the life that we're going to have. Like, we're going to get out of this. We're going to move forward. And at 10, my mom, she had known about the Lighthouse from Dr. Bob, who's our pediatrician. And so he's always like, hey, talking about the Lighthouse School, saying, hey, the school is this great place, and, you should bring your kids. And my brother, Chris, happened to meet Jeremiah Harris and Ford Harris hanging out with John Atiyah at the beach. And I remember Mr. Harris comes over to our house, and it's just like, this is late summer of 1990, and he's like, your brother, your son needs to come to our school, and all your kids are going to come. And so my mom was like, well, we were either going to go to, I think that I was going to get ready to go to Mark Twain, and then she was like, nope, we're going to Lighthouse. Came to Lighthouse. All my brothers came. It was just a blessing. It was kind of like a family, small school, immediate friends, and it was, it was such a fun place to be. The fact that is diverse and all that kind of stuff. It was, that's what it was. It was like it wasn't even a question. It was just like you just fit in, you make friends. We were welcomed into the church. We started coming here as far as the church in 2012, and that's when my mom and dad got remarried. My dad at that point was sick. He had contracted AIDS and was dying. In 1992, I was a death sentence, and I'm sure some of the people that are here today remember that. But my dad died in 1994, my freshman year in high school, and I took it pretty hard. But there was a lot of men in the church, Dave Wainwright, Harrison Summer, a lot of people that, put their arms around us and, said, hey, we're here for you as young men, because it's hard when you're, 14 years old, 16 years old, you lose your father, you feel a little bit directionless, and, but, I stayed the course. My mom always preached, hey, you're first, you're a child of God, you're an American, and, that's what's important. And so, graduated high school in '98, and after that, went to the military, went to the Army for a few years, and was able to come back, go to school, got into UCLA, graduated UCLA. At that time, I married my wife, Lauren, and we were just, young. It feels like forever ago. We were just, 16 years now. But
come on now.
after graduation, George Neos, one of my mentors, offered me a job teaching at the school, and I took that opportunity. I was already coaching the football team and just interacting with Josh Young in the youth group and getting more involved with the youth, and it felt like a natural transition to start teaching in the high school, and I was able to teach for 3 years, and going into my third year teaching, my older brother Chris was, going through a lot, and he came in to live with Lauren and I when we were newlyweds, and he's like, hey man, remember as kids you always you said you were always you wanted to be a police officer. He's like, why haven't you pursued that? And I was like, wow, that was something that was my goal, and it was something that and it took my older brother kind of we're reawakening that in me, and I still am grateful for him to this day. And I applied. I was hired by the Santa Monica Police Department, and I've been there for 12 years now.
Wow.
And so,
Gosh, time flies.
yeah.
Hey. So somewhere along there, I remember, I don't either was when you went to the military or I don't know if it was when we went to Utah, but I remember, Ben, all of your brothers, you guys were like tall and thin. And all of a sudden, Ben comes back and I didn't even recognize him. He's stacked, you know what I mean? And so I just got to ask you, for all the guys out there that want to like put on the gun show, how did you get there?
Well, this is something that
I didn't tell him about that question.
my son Zion asks me every day, Dad, when am I going to get bigger? It's like, it's coming. It's coming, dude.
It's coming?
I always say it was because, in the military, you get 3 square meals a day, and you work out quite a bit. So you eat and you work out, and you'll get jacked.
All right. All right. There's the secret. Okay. So you have to eat. All right. So thanks for sharing that background. So Ben is really kind of a special individual in this situation for our church because Ben grew up here. He's one of our alumni from like a young age, and I remember when you guys came. Not that I was really involved in that regard at that point, but I remember when you and your brothers came, and I was like, cool, like the squad rolling. So it took me a while to figure out who was who, but so your perspective is really valuable, especially in light of what's going on, and so. And we're really grateful. We're really grateful for you being here. We're grateful for who you are, for your involvement in our church. But as you are a Christian and as a police officer and a black man, how did you feel? Or how do you feel? I'm sure you have insight as far as the George Floyd situation and some of the events that are going on. How did that make you feel when you first saw it, or what was going through your head, or what were your thoughts?
Well, first off, as obviously a human being, seeing somebody, killed in front of you is tragic, and it's awful, and it's just painful. It hurts my heart, and I know it hurt the nation's heart. Every single police officer that I know. And the consensus from, social media and all that kind of stuff, everyone is like, that guy is evil. That guy did something evil. He murdered somebody, right? There's nobody. I've been a police officer for 12 years. I've been involved in a lot of use of force situations where I've had to fight people. I've had to try to control people that were literally out of control. And I've never once seen anything like that, or even been involved in something. I've been involved where people have actually died. When we were taking them into custody, they die because they were so high on drugs, and they experience excited delirium, and they die because they're being confined, not because of anything that someone's putting their knee on their neck. It's the result of the drugs mixing with just being bound. So yeah, I thought it was awful, and I think as a nation, everybody was on the same page. Everybody's on still are hey, there's no excuse, there's no for those actions.
So for the police officers that or so that was outside the lines. I mean, for our understanding, okay. That's interesting because we don't know. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know, protocol training or how you would, handle somebody in those situations. And, but for us, conflict is not something that we usually get into. We try to avoid it. If there's a problem, we call you, right? So you have a different understanding, and if for the rare moments where I've been in any type of altercation or trying to as a principal, we have, people come and they might act crazy, but I'm always trying to avoid it, but you're the one that has to like get into it. So that situation was like outside the rules, so to speak, right? That's from what I understand.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a situation where, and I can speak from my own experience where, you're engaged in a fight, you're fighting with somebody that's resisting you, that doesn't want to go to jail, that doesn't want to be taken into custody, whatever it may be, and you have to use force in order to control that person. And our penal code, gives us as police officers the power to do that, but it doesn't give us the power to abuse that, right? Like if you're in custody or if you're holding somebody down, you have to check yourself. Besides protocol or whatever, as a human being, right? If someone is on the ground and you're doing something to incapacitate them or kill them, and you have the power to stop that, or you have the power to tell somebody else, hey, what do you, like, dude, like, we do that all the time. That's happened to me. I've had to do it to officers. I've had officers had to say, hey, watch where you're putting your hands, watch where you're putting your knees, because that's not what we as police officers want. Nobody, like, that I know, and it's never been in my heart as a police officer, wants to kill somebody. That is the exact opposite. We don't want to see people killed, right? If we have to take a life, it's in the most dire circumstances. It's not because, some guy's already in handcuffs and he's on the ground. So that's what makes it so tragic, and it's just really difficult because it's like now this one guy, his actions are now a blanket statement for police officers across the country. People are questioning everything that we do, and it's like everybody's just like, dude, like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, this is no one is defending this, me especially, and I'm not speaking for my department, but I think that I could say that everybody is on the same page as I am.
Appreciate that. Thank you. For us, that's really, your perspective is really interesting. I could listen to Ben's stories all day. I always hold them up in the carpool line and ask him stories. So, it's just out of curiosity. But so on this issue of racism, how would you define racism? What would be your personal?
Anybody that disagrees with anything that I have to say is racist. No.
Wait, let me write that down real quick.
No, obviously, racism is anybody that truly believes that the color of their skin, their race, elevates them above anybody else, right? Like that they're better, they're smarter, they have, more power, whatever it may be. If you think that the color of your skin gives you something over somebody else, that's what racism is. And I think today it's becoming more prevalent. People are literally believing that they're racist. This whole white privilege thing is like, it's like, well, I have white privilege, or and it's like, no, you don't. Like, you're not better than me. Like, just because you're white, like you're better than me. Like, that's the most racist, BS that I, have heard in a long time. And it's very frustrating for people that, if of any, race that are hearing this, and you're like, and people are like, well, I have white privilege. Like, what? Like, that's racism. You believe that because of the color of your skin, that somehow you have an advantage over me or over anybody else. And it's like, they don't, it's like this lie that's like this twisted in people's mind these days. And, it's awful. And it's permeating, just everything. I mean, it's frustrating, and it's sad, and it's and it's even worse when you see, when you have friends that are white or whatever, and people are people say, oh yeah, you have white privilege, and it's like, so you think that he's better than you? Like, you're literally putting yourself below somebody else when you tell somebody else that they have white privilege. Like, you're literally saying that I'm not as good as you. because of the color of my skin. And if you believe that, then you've been lied to and you've been, like just deceived. And, that's what the devil wants. He wants to sow discord, and that's something that I've never believed, something that I was never taught, from an early age, like being, in the early 80s, we were mixed kids, right? Black and white, but my mom never made race an issue. She was like, no, like, you're Benjamin Jenkins, like, you're not this, you're not that, like, don't, like, I always, like, never wanted to feel, like, put into a box or, like, I have to be defined by, like, well, you're black, so, this or that, and it's like,
Wow.
So.
This is interesting. This is good stuff. I mean, if I even think that I have white privilege, I'm being racist. So that's an interesting. I haven't heard that before, and I appreciate that. I told you this is going to be good. So let me ask you this, Ben. Just for us, you grew up here in this area. Have you ever experienced racism, or were there ever times where you have experienced, whether it be here or in the military or maybe as a police officer, as a football coach, you've experienced?
It's difficult to say because I'm not a mind reader. So I don't know what the thoughts of people are that are treating me or treating other people around me. I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking. Right? I can assume, I can make a judgment, I can prejudge what they're thinking and say, oh, you told me to leave, you're racist. Like, clearly, it's like, okay, like that's what I think, right? But I have been in, situations, when I was in the military, it was like one of the first times I got to, like, see that, like, race was like a big deal to people. Like, growing up here, I don't know if it's just me personally. I can't speak for, every single person. I can't speak from even my own brothers. But I never really, I didn't really harp on, like, my race. I think other people kind of, would bring it up more than I would even think about it. And I'd always be like, why does that, where did that come from? I'm not thinking about the color of my skin or, who my parents are. But, if, at a young age, I remember Dan and I got pulled over. We were going to my house. It was my birthday. I think I turned 18. And we got stopped by LAPD, and I got taken out of the car and handcuffed. And Dan's sitting in the car, and he was like, "Why are you handcuffing him?" And we were just like, "What?" I was just like, "Here's my ID. I live literally 2 blocks away." And it was 2 Hispanic officers. I have no idea why they decided to handcuff me.
So Dan was still in the car.
Dan, he was in the car. And I could have taken that and been like, racist, mofos, and been like, you know what, to me, I was like, okay, look, I don't know what these cops are thinking. We weren't doing anything wrong. No one got arrested. Dan didn't even get a ticket. Just went about, or maybe he did get a fix-it ticket. I think it was his door was jacked up or his light or something. But went about my day. Something I remember, something that I think about on a daily basis that I'm afraid of ever happening to me again? No. Something that made me not want to become a police officer? No. I had interactions with police officers, in my, growing up. And every time I had interactions with Santa Monica police officers, it was always a positive interaction, even getting pulled over or stopped, or, it was at the end of it, it was always dude, those cops were really cool. It just felt it made me you know what, I want to be like that. I want to be like a Santa Monica police officer that, doesn't matter what, nationality, race, whatever the police officer was, it always ended up, at least for me, being a positive experience. And so going into the military, I grew up here on the west side of Los Angeles. It's a pretty diverse community. There's a lot of, you run into, you have, even our church, right? You have Hispanics, blacks, Asian. You see, people of all nationalities all the time. It's not like a shock, right? Seeing somebody of a different race. And going to the military was the first time, I got to basic training in Georgia, and there's, guys are from all over the country. So you have, all these guys, getting put together from, literally every state of the union, and started to see kind of like people would segregate as by race, especially when you first got there. It was like, oh, you black, come hang out with us, come sit, whatever. It's like, for me, I was like, dude, if we're cool, we're talking, you seem like a cool guy, whatever it may be, we could be friends. I didn't feel automatically like I'm your friend because, we're the same skin color, and that was very eye-opening to me. I remember in my in basic training, there was a kid on the other side of the barracks, black kid, and he was, I don't know what was going on, but he's screaming, someone was messing with him, whatever. He's like, Jenkins, they're messing with me, come on, Jenkins, and I'm just like, what? I have no idea what you're doing, dude. I don't know why they're messing with you, but I'm assuming because, right, we're both black, you're immediately I'm coming to your rescue, and I remember being like, wow, I'd never, that didn't, occur to me that, hey, you're black, I'm black, so no matter what, back me up. And I was like, wow, okay.
Did you back him up?
Yeah, I was just one of those hey, leave him alone, dude. But it was nice for him feeling that he had needed to call me to be like, hey, come back me up. He felt, that I was.
I would call you because you're big.
I was getting big at that point. I wasn't.
I'm for sure.
But yeah, no, that, and moving on, when I was in Texas in 2001, and two friends of mine, we drove to Louisiana to New Orleans for just a weekend trip. We stopped at this club, and it was in some small college town. We were, before we hit New Orleans, and we go in, it's like a dance club, and I was I think I just turned 21, and then we're in there, and I'm, on the dance floor. It looks like, oh yeah, it's gonna have a good time, and this girl tells me, she's kind of whispers, she's like, hey, this is like a white club, and I was like, what? She's like, yeah. She's like, no, it's all good. She's like, but I just wanted you to know, and I was like, oh. So I told my two of my buddies who were both white. I was just like, dude, this chick just, and they were like, dude, let's go. We're out, dude, And I remember being like, wow, I'm like, this is 2001. I don't remember the town. I don't remember the place. I couldn't tell you any of that. But I just remember someone, saying that to me and being like, okay,
That's a shock. That's a shock for us.
No, and it's one of those things where it's okay, was I going to let that affect the rest of my life, as a person, or be like, I guess I can never go back there, or that place needs to get shut down, or what? No, at the end of the day, I was just like, okay, this is. I feel sorry for those people. I feel sorry for someone that would say that that to somebody that is a different race, I'm pretty sure we're in America, right? That is against the law.
Amen.
But yeah.
Wow. So, I guess a good question for us is because, we look to Jesus as the answer. How has your relationship with Jesus, with God, helped you navigate some of these situations or issues where obviously there are people that are out there that are like that, and we don't really know who's thinking what. Like you said, I think that's really to assume what somebody's thinking is one thing. So I really appreciate that. that's a good way to look at life. But how has your relationship with God helped you to navigate the issues of racism?
I think just knowing that the devil is real and that that he's going to use anything to divide people. The first thing you see when you look at somebody, right? If they are different skin color, that's what you notice, right? You can't. Everybody, oh, I'm colorblind. No, you're not. Like if somebody is a little, darker or lighter, whatever than you notice, and it's not a bad thing. But the devil has twisted that to be like, this is. I'm going to use this to be divisive, and I'm going to, tear people down. I'm going to lie to people and tell people that you're not better, or somebody called you a name, or somebody told you that, because of the color of your skin, you're not good enough. You can't, you're not going to be successful, or you're this. You're always going to be that. And, thank God at a young age, my mom, was so faithful to instill the Word of God in me, and growing up here in the church, always feeling like, hey, look, God, if God is for you, who can be against you, right? And as a Christian, and if you believe that, the promise of God, that if He's for you, who can be against you, then you realize that anybody that's coming against you in the name of racism or whatever, like, that's just the devil, right? Like, that person literally is trapped in a lie, and it's like you can pray for them, but for me, God has always been like, okay, brush the dust off your shoulder, keep on moving. That's not going to stop you from getting where you're going, right? Like, so just because that's not the majority of people, right? That's 1, 2, whatever, however many people actually feel that way. But for me, my relationship with God has always been like, hey, you rise above that. Like, God's got you. That's right. That's for the low-hanging fruit.
Amen. It's good preaching. Are there other? So on a personal, in a personal level, is there other sources where are there leaders or voices that you would listen to besides, let's say, because you quoted a couple great scriptures there. Are there any current speakers or leaders or public figures that you like to listen to, or these are questions that I'm interested in.
So I've always enjoyed reading and learning and trying to always being able to back up what you believe, right? We can all believe something, and we can all live through our own experience. But it's nice to sometimes get a different perspective, and sometimes obviously get factual data to show you what you actually, hey, this is actually true. These things are beneficial. And so a little over 3 years ago, I started reading Thomas Sowell, and became it was like a revelation. I was like, oh my gosh, what took me? Why did it take me till 37 years old, 6 years old to delve into this? And I encourage everyone. It's intellectual, but at the same time, it's very, very important. I don't know if you guys know who Thomas Sowell was. He's a black economist. Went to Harvard without even going to high school. He at a young age was a socialist, and over time and studying and becoming an economist, basically, he was disproving his own beliefs because of the factual things that he was pulling out. So he's done tons of research on race and discrimination and crime, social studies, all these different things that are really, really fascinating. And we could, that could be reading for the Lighthouse University. You guys could, I encourage, if you're going to read Thomas Sowell, do it with somebody else. Like, hey, let's read this book together, because it's like you want to read it with somebody else because you want to discuss. It's very thought-provoking, and I encourage. He's got, 20-something books, and I've read 7, 8 of them. I got a few more to go, and but yeah, Thomas Sowell is definitely a.
That's one thing I appreciate about Ben is that he's always trying to learn, and so I appreciate that. So, Thomas, so I wrote that down when he mentioned that earlier. So let me ask you this, as a dad, because we have a school here and we have, tons of kids. How do you help your kids navigate through, let's say, there's people out there that are racist? What do you talk to your kids about, or the issues of racism?
We don't really talk about racism in our house. We talk about, personal responsibility and treating other people the way you want to be treated, and, respecting your elders and adults and authority. It doesn't really matter the color of the person's skin, and I don't, growing up, that wasn't a thing that my mom talked to us about. It wasn't like she didn't want to make it like, an issue or like something that we're constantly thinking about. And I think this day and age, like you can't, if you watch the news, everything is just, listen to music. It's just like dominating the conversation in every single aspect. And I remember watching an interview with the actor Morgan Freeman, who's, black man, and the interviewer was asking him, hey, like, how do we end racism? And he says, stop talking about it. He's like, I'm not gonna, he's like, why are we, like, I'm just gonna call you a man, you call me a man, and we're gonna go about our day, we're gonna treat each other like men, right? And, always.
Should we shut down right now?
That's it.
One of the things I told Ben is that, because I had a feeling some of these things were going to come out, but one of the reasons why I thought it would be good to talk about it is because everybody wants to talk about it right now. And I think Ben's testimony and Ben's voice and what Ben has to say should be heard, right? And so I've never, I have a similar background. I grew up here in the church too, in the school, and I thought racism personally was something in the history book, and so it never ever occurred to me that there's people that really think that way. I thought that was just like, ignorance of long past ages, and so, but I can't tell people that at this point, right? If I was a minority in a different place in the world, then I might be able to have that testimony, but Ben has the opportunity to testify, and I think it's a good message, and it's something that it's the gospel. It's the good news that God made everybody. So I'm grateful for you talking about it, even though I hope it's not going against your convictions. So that's good though, because you have great kids, by the way. The Jenkins kids are great, and And we have to give credit to Lauren. Since this is Father's Day, we want to give credit to Lauren too,
All credit.
So I have a couple more questions. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Are we okay here? Yeah. All right, we enjoying this? So let me ask you this. What has been your greatest struggle personally in life, or that you've been able to overcome? And how does that, this is on like a Ben Jenkins as an individual level, what are some of the greatest struggle or the greatest struggle you've had to overcome, and how does that shape your going forward, or how do you think that's influencing, the place where you're coming from today?
I think of a couple of different things. So for me, a lot of times I've struggled with people trying to define who I am because of what they see, right? They look at me and they go, oh, you're black, so you must think this way, or you should like this, or, why are you doing this? Like, aren't you black? And like, it's just like, I'm sorry, I don't fit in your box for where black people should be, like, and then at the same time, conversely, even in, with my black friends, and getting that pushback of being like that's that's white, or you like this this because whatever reason, but it's like it's a difficult road to navigate sometimes. Obviously, being a person of mixed race and people want to put you, to them, you got to be one or the other, right? Or and it's like, hey, like, I'm just me. I'm here. I can't be anything else. And so I've always, tried to, hey, listen, I'm going to do me. I'm going to be, Ben Jenkins. I understand. I know my family. Like, I know that, my family history. I know, my dad's black. I know my mom's white. I know my, my great-grandmother, my great-great-grandmother, still live on the land that was given to our family after emancipation. That's still in our family.
Oh, wow.
And I don't think I could do anything more to honor the legacy and the struggles and the hardships that they went through as to try to be the best human being, best Christian, best American, best example to my kids as as I'm trying to be, and I think back to my childhood and my dad not being there, coming in and out of the home, and that was a struggle for me. It was like, well, I never saw it as like, oh, he's he's bad because he's like, this is like, it had anything to do with the color of his skin, but there was like this disconnect where it was like, like, I want, like, this is my dad, but like that I didn't feel that closeness because of the things that he leaving us, and the abuse of my mom, and a lot of terrible things that I saw. So that was something that was a struggle for me. And then me growing up, talking about generational curses. 7 years ago, I made the same mistake that my dad made. I left my family, I left my wife and my kids, and it was out of pure selfishness. Like, I want what I want, and I'm more important than you. And I felt that, I think whatever it was, you call it the generational curse. I felt that, like, hey, like, if things are getting too difficult, or I don't think I can, deal with things, or things aren't going the way I want them to be, then guess what? I can leave. And I was gone for a year, and it wasn't until 2015 that Lauren and I were able to reconcile. And I remember just being, one day I was with my kids, and like, God just like punched me in the face, and was like you, like, the pain that you felt growing up, he's like, you're going to pass that on to your kids. You're going to just continue the curse of, hurt, disappointment, all these different things. I would have no idea how that would have affected, well, I do have an idea how that would affect my kids because I experienced it, but it was just like, I broke down. I was, sobbing in my bathroom and thinking, like, what am I doing? Like, and on top of that, being a youth leader here at the church, being a teacher to a lot of these young men that I totally let down, right? All the things that I preached to them, all the things that I'd, tried to set a good example in what I was doing and what the things that I was telling them, to follow God, to, get married, to just, work hard, and like, I walked away from that, and I apologize to, everyone that that I let down, that I'm sorry, it was selfish, and I obviously my wife, to her most of all, but it's something it's weighed on my heart for a long time, and so I know that, I can't make excuses, right? We all can find an excuse when we need one. I made the choice, right, to walk away, right? And so then I had to make a choice to come back. I couldn't, if you make a mistake, if you, you do something wrong, right, you do that on your own, by your own choice, but at the same time, right, you can come back and ask for forgiveness and change your ways, but you got to choose that. There was so many times when I was trying to reconcile with my wife that I was in counseling and with like a psychiatrist, and he kept trying to tell me that like somehow this like wasn't my fault, and I was like, yes, it is. Like I'm the one that left. Like I'm the one that chose to do these things, and he's like, well, let's figure out why you did this. And I was like, because I wanted to. Like I chose to do this, right? And so. That's something that I try to preach to my kids a lot is personal responsibility, is like when every decision you make is going to have a consequence. It's going to be positive or negative. And so when bad things happen or when, good things happen, right, that's most of the time, right, it's a result of our choices. And, as a police officer, I see that every single day, just good and bad choices.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. I know that trusting us with that, I know that's hard to talk about. And, it's easy to talk about our successes and our accomplishments, but to talk about our mistakes. And so I know I'm speaking by behalf of everybody. I'm sure that touches a lot of hearts because it's a decision to make it right. And I think that, Lauren's sitting here and his kids because you made that decision to make it right, and that's a testimony to that decision and what God can do. So we appreciate that, but I think that's really powerful that we all have an opportunity to make a decision. It's that's something I think about with my kids too, is that I try to tell them, it's your choice. If you want to go be an idiot, that's up to you. I'm not endorsing that, and I'm not going to help you, but if that's your choice. So if you want to make a right decision, I'm going to do everything I possibly can to make it really worth it for you. But, wow, thank you for sharing that with us. Let me ask you this question, because you are a police officer, and I think that for us in this community, what are some of the things that we might not understand or might not see as a police officer, as civilians, that we don't see happening with the police? Like if every police officer could tell us, like as if citizens of this city, like, I wish these guys would know, or...
Well, first off, the citizens of Santa Monica, in general, are really great. They're very supportive of the police department. But of course, there are some people, and this happens quite frequently, and it's been happening more and more in the last few years, is that someone that's walking out of Starbucks and sees a police officer talking to a black person, Hispanic, whatever. Now they need to interject because they just got their latte, and they're ready to tell the police officer, what's going on here. I need to know immediately, right? And as a police officer, it's kind of off-putting. You're like, okay, time out. Like, what you want to say, is, you get my can of like, I'm not going to say that, but, you want to tell them like, hey, listen, just get away from me right now. Like, just go stand over there and just shut up. But, people feel like as soon as they see police talking to somebody that's black, it's automatically like, oh, this person might just get shot. They're going to die right now. They have no idea what's going on. But just because someone is black, like you have, hey, hey, here comes, Captain Savaho to just jump in here and, save this person from the police, even though they have no idea why they're even talking to the police, why the police are even talking to them. We were on the pier, a few summers ago, and, it was a Saturday night, and the pier's packed. There's thousands of people on the pier. And there's a guy that was in the bathroom stalls that was, like, looking over the stalls at women while they're using the bathroom. And somebody, came to the pier office where there was a few officers there, and so we go out. We get the guy out. He's denying it, and the people that saw him, I think he was trying to film them, or he was seeing, like, they filmed him, like, peeking over. So we're dealing with this guy, and this black couple walks by, and they're like, "What's up? What's going on? Like, hey man, like, are you okay? Like, why are you messing with him?" And we're just like, dude, you just walked by. You have no idea why we're talking to this guy. Man, that's bull, and they're like, hey, listen, this guy was in the bathrooms peeking at women while they're trying to use the bathroom. Oh, okay. And then just, right? We're like, oh, you don't want to stand here and be his lawyer because it sounded like you had his back, and it's like, that kind of, it's like,
You didn't apologize?
No, just walked away.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of times as, police officers, you're put into positions that we don't even want to be in, right? We're not out, like, looking for, like, oh, let's find, the first person of color to walking down the street to stop and talk to. Most of the time, it's because somebody called. And I'm going to say, like, 90% of the time, somebody calls and says, oh, this person is suspicious, or this person did that, or this person, I saw this or that. And it's a very vague, but guess what? We have to go, right? Someone calls the police, we can't just be like, you know what, we're not going to that. Like, why don't you go out and talk to them, find out if they're okay, and if they should, belong here? Which, unfortunately, that's the problem with a lot of what we deal with today is that people don't want to talk to people, right? Like, you see somebody that you don't know in your neighborhood or something that you may think is fishy. Now, instead of you going outside and being like, hey, how's it going? Like, like, do you need some help or, whatever, just introducing yourself to that person, right? You call the police, and now when we introduce ourselves to them, it's like immediately it's confrontational, right? It's like, why are you talking to me? Like, hey, listen, somebody called. We're just trying to figure out, like, if everything's on the up and up. But like you, right, if you were sitting in your car and all of a sudden the cops were like, hey, man, like, can I see your ID? And you're like, what? I was just sitting here, whatever. Now, for most of us, right, you're like, oh, okay, like, I'm not doing anything wrong. I have nothing to be afraid of. But unfortunately, this happens, quite a bit, So people, that creates a huge rift between, police officers and a lot of times people of color because, somebody doesn't want to just go out and say hello and find out if there's any reason for them to be afraid or to be concerned or to be, to call the police because of this. Most of the time it's like, okay, well, it's just maybe it's just some guy, some homeless guy just sitting there taking a break, just wanted to get out of, or whatnot. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes, hey, look, this guy's on parole for burglary. It's a good thing you called because, he's got a no bail warrant and he's wanted by parole. We need to take him to jail. But at the end of the day, we're not going out like hunting, right? It's like that's the message that people are like most of the time these are people, these are citizens that get to remain anonymous, right? They can sit in their house and be like, I didn't, like I just called, and then if there's some sort of confrontation, if there's something that goes awry, it's our fault when, the citizen actually introduced this interaction.
So what I'm hearing is that what we need to do is talk to people.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to talk
hello.
to people.
Hey, what's up?
Don't be afraid to engage or, it's important. I think people are like, everybody's like retracted into their homes and so afraid of everything. And instead of being like, hey, I live here. Like my neighbor lives there. Like I know that's my neighbor's house, right? Eric, you see some guy hop over your neighbor's fence. You're not, like if you go, hey, what do you? If you say something, let them know that that somebody's seeing them, right? There's a better chance that maybe your neighbor's house doesn't get broken into and that person leaves. Or if you call, who knows how long the police are going to take to show up, right? And, your neighbor gets ransacked and you're like, well, I could have said something. And I'm not saying go out and put yourself in danger or anything like that, but I'm just saying, a lot of times these confrontations or whatever can be completely, done away with or de-escalated just by someone, introducing yourself to somebody, hey, how's it going? So, and, believe me, someone's going, oh, what are you talking to me for? F off, whatever. Okay. Like, just want to say hi, and then you have a better sense of like, okay, maybe that person is, up to no good, as opposed to just by the way they look, calling the police on them.
That's good. That's really good. Because, we have masked men taking our money every service, and they look really intimidating. So I appreciate that. That's really good. That helps us, right? Is being willing to confront and to say hello. Hey, what's going on? I can't imagine how hard it is for you guys because you have to confront people every single time. But I'm grateful for the police. Years ago in Santa Monica, we had somebody that had a weapon that had just attacked somebody that was in our backyard. And when the police showed up, man, I was like, I wanted to pledge allegiance and thank God and praise the Lord all at the same time. I was like, I've never been so in awe and admiration of the police as when they showed up took care of business. So that was really awesome. Well, let me, we are kind of pushing on the time-wise, but let me ask you this, Ben. You came here as a kid and you felt comfortable. You made the Lighthouse Church your home and family, and some of that was your mom making it the home, but obviously you're still here. How can we minister, from your perspective as an officer, but also a member of our congregation? How do you think we can help as a church, as individuals? And maybe this is like an extension of the last thing you said of talking to people, but how do you think we can help in our community bring healing and really minister to people that might be hurting, or to be more of a solution? Because, we want to be a blessing in our city. We want to make a difference. We would love it. And we would love it if the police were like so bored, because God's moving, Yeah. But what's your perspective on that, or what would you say for us? How can we help? What made you?
From my perspective, the greatest ministry this church has is the school, and being open to the community, and that, from my family to, I don't know how many other tens of, families that were brought into the church because of the school, and people that have come and stayed and gotten married, and, generations of kids that are now part of the church and the school. Is, be supportive of the school, right? If you can, you can teach, or you can, donate, or you send your kids here to school. It's such a huge ministry because it's so much different than the stuff that kids are being taught. Right? I'm a school resource officer, so I have to go to all the schools in Santa Monica, and we do sit downs. I teach parenting classes. I do a lot of different things from the public side, right? And so it's so unfortunate that the stuff that our kids learn here, right, is just, it's like completely foreign to most kids, going to schools, going to public schools. And the love, the family, the friendships that are made here for kids is huge. And I think any kid, that's ever gone to Lighthouse, they always will remember, that's always like, oh yeah, I went to Lighthouse, for, maybe it was a couple of years or, however long, but it's a very special experience, either because they, God spoke to them, or maybe they were, introduced to God for the first time, or, it was a refuge from, a difficult home situation. All these different things are what makes, I think, the school the most important aspect of this church, right? The Lighthouse, right? It's a beacon. So to to make it available for kids in the community, right? Where, there's a lot of kids that are in, dire straits, that are dropping out of school, that are not doing well, that are just getting passed through public school because just let them go through the system. And there's a lot of kids that have come to the Lighthouse that have, been totally touched and, transformed and doing great things because the school was here. So that's why, my kids are here, and that's why, I chose to teach here and to kind of give back, from, what I received.
Wow, that's I appreciate that. I mean, I agree. I mean, I think the school is an incredible ministry of our church, and it really brings that family, because I remember you from school, but I was a little bit older.
Yeah.
So is there anything else that, I mean, before we wrap this up, is there anything else that comes to mind that you would like to share with us, or any thoughts? I've really appreciated this. This has been really good, I think. It's been amazing. I'm actually going to go back and listen to it again, just because I love some of the things you've said, and I didn't get to write them down exactly the way you've said it, but I really appreciate it. But is there anything else that maybe you'd like to say? I mean, you've said a lot of powerful things, but...
I would say, turn off your TVs, just, realize that, and this is something that, as you get older, you're like, all these different things that I was told as a kid that you're like, like the devil is real, right? How you represent yourself is a lot of times how you're going to be perceived. And I remember today I was thinking about, coming here and talking with Josh. I remember being in like 6th, 7th grade, and Pastor Rob was always like, tuck your shirts in, Everybody, like he was like tuck your shirts in. And he's like, you know why? Because if you guys are walking down the street and, the Union Bank president sees all these Lighthouse kids walking around like looking sharp with their shirts tucked in, that might, like, hey, that school's, and it's like, really, like, and then like now as an adult and, as a police officer, like, if I see a group of kids that they all look, they're all in uniform and they're all, look sharp, they're not all, ragtag, looking sloppy and everything else. It's like, hey, look, somebody cares about those kids. Those kids like have respect for themselves. The image that they're trying to portray is that, hey, like we're not, like we're not just whatever, right? We actually, somebody cares about us. They're portraying an image like, hey, look, we're put together, right? Like, and maybe we're not, right? But that is, it says a lot. It's a testimony, and even as a kid, you don't really think about it, but now as an adult, thinking back, I'm like, seeing that, that's like, hey, that's like, where are all these kids from, right? Like, like that speaks to people, right. And it goes a long way, and so, we could probably talk for quite some time about a lot of things, but I think everybody's tired of hearing me. So
it's been good. Amen. Let's give Ben a hand. Right on, bro. So we're going to wrap this up. I remember when Ben came back and he gained probably like 100 pounds of muscle. And the first thing I thought when I saw Ben when he came back from the military or whatever, I thought, was there anything I did to make him mad back then that I'm going to have to pay for now? But that was really exciting. I think that was really powerful. And I think that there's something that we need to, in every church service, in every moment, when we come to a moment with God, because this is what we do, and this is what we've done tonight, is that God brings us to a decision, to making a decision. That's what an altar is. And so before we close, I want you to think about, because I believe there's something that Ben has said that God wants us to make a personal decision. Like God spoke to each one of you. We did this in church because I believed, and I'm confident that God did move and spoke to each one of us as individuals in this time to say, I'm going to make a decision about this in my life, personally. And so we're going to close in prayer, but we want to have a moment of what we call altar. And so I'm just going to pause for a moment, and I want you to think about, we're just going to pause for a moment, then we're going to pray. But what has God spoken to you tonight that you're saying, God, I'm going to make a decision. This is what I'm going to do. Maybe it's how I can reach our community. Maybe it's how I can help our police officers. Maybe it's how you can minister within our church, school. Maybe it's how in your own life, some decisions that need to be made and say, I'm going to take personal responsibility. I'm so grateful for Ben. He was really humble and really exposed and vulnerable in this time. But we're not going to waste it. We're going to take it and say, you know what, God spoke to me through Ben. And so let's take this opportunity. We're just going to be quiet for just a moment. And why don't you just pray, ask God, and let's just think about it, Amen.